Today on The Good Sport, I'm excited to welcome a newly inaugurated Olympian from Team SA. Competing in one of the most interesting martial arts in the world, he is the first fencer in 16 years to represent South Africa at the historic event. The champion from the African Championships in 2022, the bronze medalist, let me say. He is also soon to become a mechanical engineer and a graduate from my alma mater, Wits University, where he was awarded Sportsman of the Year in 2020. Committed to growing the sport, inspiring hope, and creating opportunities for the future generation of South African fencers. Harry Sainer, welcome to The Good Sport, my friend.
Thank you for having me, Ava.
Yeah, very excited. So This is like something that very few people outside of like my parents and my close friends know. Is that, I've been taking fencing lessons and this is how I've met our Olympian and can actually say that in a practice bout, I've managed to score some points against an Olympian, a sentence I never thought I would actually have the opportunity to say.
Not bad, that's fun.
Yeah, not bad. Do you remember this? Please validate that this actually happened.
I mean, I could say I gave you a few points.
Okay. For confidence.
You probably earned them, so well done.
Thank you. Yeah, so it's obviously really a big deal, like what you've managed to accomplish and this whole ride that you've been on. Like I said, like fencing is such a niche and unique sport, and one that I feel like people don't often consider it as the martial art that it is, especially juxtaposed to boxing, jiu-jitsu, karate. People don't compartmentalize it the same way. What do you think makes the sport so unique?
That's an interesting question. I think you're right in that it isn't seen in the same way as other martial arts. And I think that's because you're always behind a mask, one, so you don't get to see all that emotion that's running through you when you are fencing. And also, with swords, all the big hits or big swings or blocks or defensive things are very like technical and precise movements that only if you're trained as a martial artist, you'd be able to see. So something for like boxing or MMA, when someone gets hit, you can see that they are hurting. Whereas fencing, like it hurts more emotionally and hurts your dignity more. Yeah, more than
it's
like
guttural.
Yeah, exactly. And I think fencing is unique in that like it's the only sword sport. I mean, there are other things like kendo and such, but it's like it's just thousands of years of history, just like every other martial art. But it's the modern musketeer almost.
Yeah, it's so interesting. Like I've done like multiple deep dives on fencing being a very different kind of martial art. I don't know how many of the martial arts trace back to Europe also. Like I can't think of any other ones, but like I think some of the biggest ones that we've just cited and like all know and love, like their origins are either from the Far East or I think even jiu-jitsu, Far East, even though like the Gracie family and the Brazilian legacy of it is like really huge. So many of them are like these really thousands of years old disciplines.
Absolutely.
That don't originate from Europe. So I think like the culture around it and the history around fencing is also very unique. And it's also the only martial art without weight classes.
Exactly. Yeah. And you can see in my fencing bout at the Olympics, like the guy I was fencing was from Kazakhstan. He was twice my width and about like, I don't know, 6'7".
Dude,
yeah, at
he
least
was massive.
Yeah, a head and a half taller than me, massive beard too. And he's like 27. And he'd do great as a rugby forward, I think. But,
yeah. He looked like he had Viking genes. Yes, I know it's very far.
Absolutely.
Central Asia is nowhere near.
No, well, there's a lot of history in that area, but yeah, it does look like a big Viking.
Yeah, no, it's crazy. And I was thinking about this while watching you fence and like seeing your opponent, which is a luck of the draw situation, right? Like when you have 64 athletes in the fencing category, it's random, right? Who you get paired with.
So how they did it was you have your FIE global ranking.
Okay.
And so that's normally how they just seed everybody. And so for the special part at the Olympics is they seed everybody, but then they do draws for like in pairs. So it's like who's 1 and 2. So 1 and 2 can switch places and they do that all the way to the end. So you can like switch it up and you have 2 options of who you're going to fence to make things less predictable.
Okay.
So you can't just get overstudied and end up in the end.
So at that beginning stage, how were you paired up with someone from Kazakhstan on the basis of ratings?
Yeah, so it was ranking.
Okay.
And I think we actually maintained our rank, so we didn't get switched
Okay.
or he didn't get switched, so I fenced him.
So that's interesting. So it's not entirely random. So then ranking wise, you have people of similar rankings going up against each other instead of like a super high ranking and mid-table ranking going up against each other?
It still does do that, but it's just taken off the FIE ranking. So
I see.
normally how the fencing internationally goes is you have a round of pools first.
Okay.
Then that sets you up, it gives you like a seeding for the next round, and then you fight. I think it's table of 128, depending how big the competition is. You fight all the way to get into the table of 64, which is the next day. And a special privilege of the top 16 ranked is normally that they are automatically into the next round of 64. And then the top 16 right out of the pools go into that into the 64 as well. And the last 32 are all fought for. So everybody who didn't make it in either by ranking or by seeding from the pools, they fight for their slots into the 64.
Okay.
And so like technically for me, my fighting for the 64 was the African zonal qualifier, where I beat all the Africans to win my slot in the Olympics and therefore made it to the table of 64.
First one in 16 years.
Yeah.
Huge deal.
Absolutely.
Yeah. That is obviously the most standout quality for me of fencing. And like going back to the fact that it doesn't have weight classes. And like you said, it's so much more of a tactical sport that it also diminishes the impact of physical disparities, although not entirely.
Yeah.
Like obviously in the sense someone's reach can play such a big part in the advantage they have. If someone is like your Kazakh opponent a head and a half taller than you, I think that correlates with arm length, right?
Yes, normally.
And then that plus the sword, which is standardized, would mean that they can get to you a little bit easier, or I don't know exactly how many degrees easier, but it is an advantage. But I think that's also what makes it so interesting in the context of the disparities between men and women. It is one of like the few sports and probably the only martial art where even though historically there's two respective categories for men and women as far as competing, it's not because of outright physical dominance that there are those two categories. It was just because of like the historical and cultural aspect of, you know, men competing against men, or at least that's what my research on that topic unveiled. Like you could have a woman who has an advantage over a man that isn't even on the basis of their FIE rankings, for example. Yeah.
Well, interestingly, my coach told me that like the top 64 or rather the top echelon of the women's fences are normally about the same level as the top 64 of the men's fences. And like, there's no doubt about it, like physical disparities do exist, and like it is just more difficult to fence men who have more testosterone and muscle, etc. It's not saying that women can't compete with them and do really well and like even beat them, because I'm sure I'd get floored by a lot of the top women in fencing. But
I think that's the cool thing.
Yeah.
In other sports, you wouldn't even like fathom putting a man against a woman and being like, go for it.
Yeah.
Like this is such a tactical sport that there's that much more room for someone to outthink you and outact you. And yeah, I think that makes it really special and at least empowering. I'm like, yeah, just the fact that like in an environment, I think this goes to more martial arts as well. The fact that in the same fencing academy, you often have practice bouts against women.
Absolutely.
And everyone's game improves as a result of that.
I was going to touch on that. I mean, all my training, I fence with multiple women. And the thing is, men and women do fence differently. They like the sort of tactical lines they tend to choose varies when you get to like certain scales. But at training, when you're training with a woman and a man's training with, or like vice versa, you both learn a lot. And like, you're just improving in either patience, which is normally like the women like to play the waiting game a bit more, or like a bit more aggression and ferocity. And choosing that time is what like we get to learn in fencing.
Yeah. Firstly, shout out to Tischler Fencing Academy and Dr. Tisch, the only fencing academy in Joburg. And this is obviously where we met. And yeah, it's really cool. Like it's such a cool sport. We know, I don't want to put you through repetitive questions that you've already answered before. And obviously, like you were very into the medieval world and musketeers, and that's what drew you into the sport. But at what point did you recognize that like you're a serious fencer who has potential to represent South Africa internationally?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know. I think the dream of the Olympics was always there. And to know or to believe that you can qualify and that you can represent your country on the biggest stage in the world is like, you need to compartmentalize it. It's not oh yeah, I can do that at first. It's kind of like, okay, well, I'm working to this. I know I need to do this to qualify. Okay, cool. I think I can qualify. Let's work towards that. And like working towards that and having it happen is just surreal. It's really weird that like, yeah, we can go through all the cliches of hard work pays off and all that, but it is like,
no, tell people the real story.
well, I mean, like a lot of things have to go right for you to be able to qualify. I mean, one of the Kenyan fencers who I know, he like booked the wrong flight or something, but it was during the floods of or the airports got flooded, and so the flights were delayed and etc. etc. But he only arrived when the competition had already continued to the middle of the day. So like he didn't get an opportunity to even compete for the slot for the Olympics.
Wow.
Well, like it's a tough sport, and there is only one winner at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And I mean, it was also really interesting because there's a completely different vibe to the Olympics. Like, yes, it's a bigger stage. There's more people. There's more of an atmosphere and an amazing venue. I don't know if you saw the Grand Palais.
Yeah, I did.
But all that stuff is like, yes, you can prepare for it, but nothing really prepares you for being able to be there and like just taking it all in.
And also like actually being like the star of the show, like at one of the homes of fencing. It is such an iconic venue from what I heard, because I obviously didn't know the history behind the Grand Palais. I don't want to say it wrong. I don't speak French. But also like the sport has such a history in France. So Kauai posted onto their Instagram page, after Tatiana Smith won gold, they posted a photo of her and then the golden milk.
Oh, okay. Nice.
Golden milk. I don't know what happened there. The golden milk smoothie. And they were saying like, yeah, that was the analogy.
Golden moment.
Yeah. So I'm thinking this is actually really cool. The green and gold continues. You ordered this exact, it seems to be something among y'all Olympians.
Yeah, that's a golden mentality.
It seems that way.
In fact, I think I have like a psychological aversion to silver and bronze.
What, really?
Yeah, because I read a book. I don't know, I can't remember the name of the book. But it touched on like having a gold mentality and how you should choose things in your environment that remind you to make golden choices. And so like not just goal setting for things like, oh, this would be a golden achievement if I work and like achieve this mark in school or whatever. This is silver, this is bronze. And then you can like break that down into like what actions do you need to do golden actions. And like, yeah, it's just I suppose it's a good thing to not like silver and bronze because it's motivating you to keep wanting to win.
I mean, I get you. I mean, I love silver, as you can see, as far as like rings go. But I've never let it stop me from being, top one.
Having a golden mentality.
having a golden mentality. It's just off the charts. But I like the analogy. It's also important to just adopt philosophical principles that work for you.
Absolutely.
Because I also think it's just like, it's such a personal thing, your relationship with concept, right? Like, yeah.
That's an interesting topic. I mean, just like your perspective on life makes your world, and having a certain perspective to orientate you in the best way possible for your sport or your life is definitely a very, like, I suppose, widespread topic, but it's something that more people should be aware about so that they can understand that like they can choose their lives. And yes, I can say that, and it's way easier said than done. But it does take a team. You can't just do it by yourself. And if you can build that team and help you to push you to where you want to go, you can do it.
I'm so glad you said that. It really takes a village. Nothing great is accomplished like alone. Like you can get really far on your own, but you can only go as far as one person is capable of going when you do things on your own. And the reality is that behind all individual success is a lot of people laboring to make it happen. A lot of good advisors, a lot of people who, like, I just realize this in my own capacity. Like, I've been a bottleneck for a lot of my own operations because if I'm the person that needs to make all the decisions relating to everything that I do, I don't notice where I'm getting in my own way. Yeah. And I think that's the beauty of having good advisors and people that you trust and you have faith in them and know that when you're in over your head, they can tell you you're capable of this and, just remind you of what's important. And we're hearing from an Olympian. You're telling us about the golden mentality. So it's obviously true. I'm no Olympian, so listen to him. So we have the peanut butter bomb and the golden milk.
The golden milk.
Nice one.
Yeah.
Cheers.
Thank you
cheers,
very much.
cheers, cheers. Straw interlude.
Yes.
I'm so grateful, aside from the potential real damage to seas and turtles and all of that, that we don't have to deal with paper straws.
I think bioplastic's good. But yeah, paper straws is a little, they just get soggy and then it's just sad.
Also, like, hemp is a great alternative for using to make plastic, like hemp plastic.
Yes.
But paper straws are just like, they don't work for beverages.
I saw Italians started just using pasta rods or like bigger pasta with like longer whatever. And I was like, man, I want a pasta straw. It sounds pretty good.
I feel like it's one of those things that if Italians didn't do it and like an American person did it, they'd be like, sacrilege.
Yeah, it's like, what are you doing?
But like now that they've come up with it, it's fine.
Did I answer your question before things cut out?
The question around, do you remember what I asked?
No.
No, I think you did. I don't remember us being...
Remember I started asking it and then we didn't.
Well, the question that I last remember asking, it's fine. It's fine.
Okay.
I don't explicitly remember being on a question, so it's good. We were just speaking about, the importance of, now we were speaking about the importance of having a team structure and, not being the end all be all of your own operation. And the training against women. I remember you were speaking about that and how men and women do behave differently and like fight differently, and it's tactics.
I also wanted to touch on, you mentioned like height advantage.
Mm-hmm.
And like, I know the guy who won the Olympics is shorter than me and he's from Japan. His name's Kano Koki. And he's just an absolute beast of a fencer. So like, for me, it's not so much that if you're taller and bigger, you have an automatic advantage. Especially for a martial art like fencing, the advantage comes in a difference of timing. So like, yes, they are longer and have more reach, but it's just a different time or timing for you to attack them or you to defend against them. So like you would see in my bout, I'm running away constantly because I know the distance of his attack, but I never get back into the right distance to redouble my own attack and then catch him off guard.
I see.
So it's like, yes, it's great to hit you from afar, but it's if you get the right timing, your hit doesn't matter because you can get a parry, you can hit him before he hits you, even with the height advantage. And there's like margins. A lot more technicality than just like, okay, he's bigger. Like,
And that goes back to why there's no weight classes, and that's not where like what the defining factor of success in fencing is, which is very different to other martial arts. Like that's why like it's important to have weight classes. You get beat up by someone who's bigger than you, like a lot more straightforwardly, even if they have the perfect tactic or technique. And
mass is a huge difference.
Like it would be unfair, like it would be outright unfair to do that. There's this beautiful alignment in fencing and what the good sport stands for. Listen to this thing off of the Wikipedia page on fencing.
Mm-hmm.
Described as high-speed chess, each bout begins and ends with a salute. Good sportsmanship and honor are stressed at every level of training and competition. So I really like that because it touches on everything that we've spoken about in terms of high-speed chess is not what I would have even used to describe it, even though it is so tactical. So the fact that that is actually just how the sport is described, it speaks to how much like thinking and strategizing and being quick on your feet and reading like these subtleties that your opponent is, displaying. Like I know one of the constant things that I'm told every time when I'm training or in a lesson with Dr. Tischler is like smaller movements.
Yeah,
like,
because otherwise you telegraph and it's like, oh, you've been hit before you even know.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, don't move your head too much. If you're going to go for like someone's foot, like you can't be looking down
it's like,
and all of these things. So it's so cool that it's described as high-speed chess. I love that.
There's also I read somewhere, I don't know if it's true, but like ballet is meant to be the dancing expression of fencing, where like fencing also has this, not only the honor and this like poise to it, but also a lot of grace in the movements. And like, yes, it can get messy like any martial art. But it also, when you execute a beautiful action and your opponent's just being completely outdone, you know, like you did a good job then. And then like you reset, you go again. It's like, okay, let's focus on the next one.
It's the graceful art of bamboozling.
Yeah. Yeah.
I feel like the whole thing's just bamboozling each other.
Got him.
Got him. It's tag with swords.
Yes,
Linear
exactly.
tag with swords. What did it take to go pro?
Well, okay, I'm not super pro because I'm not getting paid. And I would like to get paid. So if anyone sees this,
I think this is
hit me up for a
important
sponsor.
because we were having this conversation with the Banyana goalkeeper, Kaylin Swart. South African female football is not competitive. Oh, it's not pro either. But I don't think it diminishes the fact that you're doing what a pro athlete does. You know, just because the infrastructure isn't supporting you, it doesn't mean that you're not going in there as a professional, you know?
Absolutely. And yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that because like, even though you're not technically a professional who's paid to do your sport, carrying yourself as a professional in everything you do is an important aspect, not only just for life, but for the people around you, knowing that you're reliable and you will do what you say you do. And I mean, especially for sports, it's like, oh, okay, I don't want to fence today. I don't want to gym today. I don't want to do it, you know, I don't want to do X, Y, Z. Okay, cool. I'm going to do it anyway because tomorrow I'll regret not doing it. So, you know,
it's a commitment to self. It's a commitment to the bigger cause that you have.
Absolutely.
And that is what like that golden mentality that you spoke of, like that's what it comes down to.
Yeah.
I think it's easy to assume that like just because you enjoy something that you never work a day or whatever. No, you work every day. You work whether you feel good or whether you feel bad, whether you're tired or you're not, because the goal is bigger than you, because you know that you will feel worse tomorrow if you didn't show up today. And so it's a consistent like process of showing up even when you're not getting rewarded for it, because that ultimate reward of qualifying for the Olympics and that Olympic dream, that's not like, that is what you're moving, but that's not always there.
Yeah.
That's not there every weekend when you're at training.
Yeah.
You know, like you still have to do it.
It's a nice guiding star to have the idea of this big, massive sports event. But I had this conversation with my parents where like, they would always be like, are you sure you still want to do this? Like, you can stop if you want. And I was like, at a point, it was like, this is for me. I enjoy this. Like, yeah, it sucks sometimes, but with everything in life, you get frustrated. You don't like certain aspects of it, but you deal with it because you know for yourself, you want to give it your all. And whether or not you win or qualify or don't qualify, knowing that you gave it your all is the most important part.
And I think that this is why sports are so powerful in South Africa, and why, you know, what you're doing, what Kaylin's doing, it's for the South African people, because you're not being rewarded for it. You're not showing up to training because of that paycheck. And I think that is obviously like that should be the case. You should be paid for what you're doing for the country and what you're doing for the sport. But it just speaks to like the absolute love and dedication that you have, that you're not doing it out of that reward. It would be great, but you're not doing it because of that. You know, that's not your motivating factor every day. And you don't think that tomorrow the infrastructure is going to be different. You would have quit a long time ago if that was your motivating factor. Same with me with music. If streams was like the motivating factor behind each release, I would have stopped releasing music a very long time ago. Like, you have to have a deep love for the craft, something that you see and you believe in that maybe everyone else it's going to take them the longest time to see. And you've been in the sport for how many years now? 13?
Yeah, no, 14.
14
I started
years.
in 2010. And yeah, I mean, like, for everything, you should start with a passion and enjoyment. But passion and enjoyment's great at the beginning. But to rekindle that every time you arrive at training or fencing or whatever, I mean, like, even if you don't train for a specific sport, showing up for yourself, and not like, yes, your community is very important, but at the end of the day, knowing that you're showing up for you and that this will benefit your community is two separate things that should both fuel you, if that makes sense.
Yeah, like one day one of them will fuel you more, but like you just keep that as like the actual guiding star. Like, there's different levels of goals, right? Like, that commitment to self is a more everyday thing that keeps you accountable to showing up, whereas like the Olympic dream. It won't like always on a bad day be the thing that gets you to show up to training, but that commitment to self, the commitment to community, the fact that you know what you're working towards, and tomorrow will be harder if you didn't show up today.
Absolutely. And I mean, speaking of infrastructure, I think obviously South Africa has a long way to go, and I think that is prevalent throughout every household conversation you'll ever have. And it does suck that smaller sports don't get the coverage. At the same time, there's no structure in place to allow everybody to collectively be like, oh, look, this is a fundraising thing, because South Africa doesn't have a lack of people willing to do what it takes for sport or anything.
No.
It's a lack of like cohesion of, okay, everybody, this is what we're doing. Everybody's buying in, and then we're working towards it. And especially for fencing, like, I don't know. Let me not get into my federation and stuff, but like there is work to be done, because federations aren't run by Olympic athletes, and they're done by administrators, and there is decent work in that. And I'm not saying that administrators are bad. It's just being an Olympic athlete gives you a different perspective on sports overall. And there's not enough of a tradition of having athletes or retired athletes in high administrative positions to give the athletes now what they need to compete at the best.
Yeah, I understand. It's from that firsthand experience of knowing what was like lacking, and also knowing what an athlete would need. Like an administrative job, obviously valued. There's plenty of people who are extremely good at their job and they're passionate about improving the infrastructure and whatever not. But like, it's not the same as having been an athlete and knowing what the athletes actually need most and what kind of things they will feel on a daily that they could benefit from existing.
Yeah.
I actually did want to speak about our coach, Dr. Tischler, and how amazing of a gift it is to South Africa that he is here growing the sport. I mean, he's just like such a legendary character.
Absolutely.
Like,
yeah.
It is actually crazy. Like, he has such a crazy story. For the audience who, may not be familiar, Dr. Tischler, as I call him. I don't know how many people call him doctor.
Well, I call him coach. Trainer.
That's how he introduced himself to me, so I just stuck with it.
Hi, I'm coach. Yeah.
I'm like, no, doctor.
Yeah.
Doctor. Yeah. He's from the USSR and like comes from a real legacy fencing family. His father was like a multiple world champion, a bronze medalist at the Olympics, also a very massive, well-known, well-regarded coach in the fencing community. He trained his wife to becoming a competing fencer, an Olympian, from previously not knowing how to fence, I believe. His son, also a multiple national champion and African Games and Commonwealth medalist. Like, this is serious fencing legacy. And like I said earlier, Tischler Fencing Academy is the only one of its kind in Joburg. Yeah. I don't know how many other fencing academies there are in the country. I'm not really clued up on that.
I think it's Tischler Fencing School.
Not academy. There we go.
Yes.
There we go. Thank you for the correction.
But I mean, like, there are a variety of clubs around Joburg, but his is by far the best, as like the results speak for themselves.
Yeah,
his
absolutely.
Students are on the top of the ranking, including me. And yeah, it's an absolute blessing to have him, to have a high level coach come to South Africa, and for me to be able to have that and be coached very well technically is an absolute blessing. And I believe, so he grew up in Russia, Moscow, but his father was Ukrainian, and they were both of Jewish descent. So they had and like their surname's German, so it's quite a it's quite a ride. Eastern European mix.
Yeah, it's wonderful. And one of like my favorite things about South Africa is just like getting to meet people like this. Like, imagine my first time rocking up to Tischler Fencing School. I was low-key like so nervous because I'm like, I heard his Russian accent and I'm like, oh my God, what did I get myself into? This is so serious. Like, you're like, oh my God, I'm a Russian coach. This is going to be like so crazy. And
you're going to be
so
beaten into shape.
Yeah, I was like, oh my God, I'm going to get drilled. This is going to be boot camp style. But then he was so nice. And I remember telling him, like, he's so sweet and he's like so positive reinforcement-y. And you're like, he wasn't always like this.
Also, like, if you mistake a few times, he'll be like, can you focus? Okay, cool. And then it's like, okay, good.
Don't overthink. Okay, yes. Don't overthink. You're thinking too much.
Yes. Just do what I said. Yeah.
No, it's amazing. And like, when he found out that I'm a musical artist, he was telling me like that he used to be part of a rock band.
Yeah, I think he's a drummer.
like back in uni, and they were touring all over USSR. And I'm like, oh my God, Dr. Tischler, you're an absolute rock star. Like, that's so crazy. The fact that he's performed more times than I have, just judging by how he was describing that story. So yeah, he's an absolute character of note and one of those like people who I would totally read an autobiography on.
Well, I think his father has so many texts. I think they've also all been translated from Russian into English. And so like there's just a wealth of fencing knowledge that's just sitting unread. And I mean, like, your coaches are people that will have forgotten more than you'll ever know, which is quite an interesting thought to have. But I mean, you know, that
fried my brain for a little bit. It took me a while to understand. Yeah, it's incredible. I mean, like you said, you go way back with him, and I obviously imagine you've traveled a lot together. What does it feel like to be at the Olympics with the coach who taught you fencing at 10 years old?
Yeah, it was a weird experience. I mean, I suppose he's always been like a father to me, despite my parents and him having several arguments, shall we say. And yeah, it is a little unfortunate that he doesn't travel with us all the time, but he is always there, like for a call, like, okay, try and focus on this or do that. But it is always a nice experience because it's someone to fight for you that's not the fencing match. And like anything that's like politics wise, or they did a ranking wrong, or they pulled something wrong, he's there to make as much noise as possible so that it's like done justly and correctly. And yeah, having them there at the Olympics was a nice like anchor to have, to be like, okay, like I'm struggling with this guy. Okay, cool, we'll try this. And you're like, okay, I'll try that. It didn't work out in the end, but you know, it's still an absolute privilege to be able to go.
Was it a nice bonding experience?
I think so. I don't know. He was busy doing work quite often, and I don't know. Time just melts away at the village. It's kind of like you wake up, you go eat, or you go train, and then it's like wake up, eat, train, do something for a couple hours. Oh, it's bedtime. Oh, I have to wake up again and repeat for like the week before.
Quite routinized by the time you get there.
Well, it was weird because there was always like disruptions. I found that I didn't like. The village isn't a peaceful place. There's always someone training or doing their own thing. I found that I didn't rest super well. I think there's just always background noise or light or.
Were they cardboard beds? The
frames were cardboard.
Okay.
And then we had like 3 squares of like this foam mattressing that they had different hardness ratings on top of. So if you flip them, it was like, okay, one was the softest, 2 harder. And then they also had like a center where you go, they take your measurements of like height, weight, etc., and take like pictures of you. And then they recommend what hardness ratings you should have. Okay. Like softest for your head, like number 3 for your torso, and then like number 2 for your legs. And it was like, I don't know. My bed at first was fine because I was there for a week. I competed, and then like you're asked to leave the village a couple of days after. Then I stayed for the closing ceremony. So when I came back, I was in someone else's bed who had, you know, like they had moved out, so I moved in, and it was much harder than my one. And I was like, oh, so it's like a manufacturing thing, like because at first I was like, I don't know what people are complaining about.
Oh my God, you had it good. That's good.
Yes, and then I lie back and I do this, and my elbows were just sitting on the bed, and like my hands go numb because just from the pressure of my elbow nerve. And I was just like, oh, I get it now. You need an extra layer.
That's so interesting.
Yeah.
Like, walk me through your experience at the Olympic Village. I feel like there's so much to cover. I felt really blessed to be able to keep up with your experience through your stories. And it's like, oh my God, we see an Olympian at the Olympic Village. It's so crazy. How is everyone grouped? Is it on the basis of the specific sport you're in or the nationality? How is everyone,
it's by country. So
it's by country.
There's a bunch of like essentially apartment blocks.
Mm-hmm.
So like USA had its own apartment block. I think Australia and the Netherlands, like the bigger countries, have their own apartment blocks. The rest,
because they have that many competing athletes.
Yes, exactly. So South Africa, we had like a couple floors. That in our own apartment block, and it was shared with a few other countries and whatnot.
Okay.
But yeah, do you want me to go through the whole?
No, I mean, tell us whatever you want to tell us.
Okay, well, like my sort of timeline of events was like, okay, arrive, deal with a bunch of admin and waiting in lines and like getting your accreditation sorted out.
Mm-hmm.
Eventually, the buses took forever at first because I think everybody was still scrambling to get an idea of what to go and be more efficient. And then once we did arrive at the village, it was like overwhelming at first. It's like, wow, cool, you're in the Olympic Village, and it's such a weird thing to say, and it's so surreal now. It feels like I watched a movie and then it's done, and it's like, oh wow, and then it's like, wait, I was a part of that movie.
Like one of those fever dreams where
Yeah.
like you won't believe where I just came from.
Yeah. Also, like, yeah, you tell people, and I don't know, you say you're an Olympian, and it kind of like goes over their head, and then like they double take, and it hits them again. They're like, what?
Who are people? Like, you mean outside the village?
Yeah, no, well, not at the time of the Olympics, but when I had come back, and
Yeah.
now I can now introduce myself as, hi, I'm Harry, I do this, I'm an Olympian, and it's like, oh wow, that's cool. And
Yeah.
it's like, wait a second, wait, that's really cool.
Yeah, I mean, like,
Yeah.
what? That's crazy, actually.
Yeah, and like, yeah, I suppose you want to know more about the dining hall. Like, I don't know, I found it was okay. It was.
How did you know I wanted to know about the dining hall?
Well, everybody asked a few, like the main questions.
I have to say, like, before you get into it, I saw this one meal you posted and there was a croissant on the tray.
Yes.
It looked kind of average. Was it average?
Well,
Was it great? Because you're at the home of croissants. That's why I want to know.
It was a really good croissant.
Okay, good.
I
good.
think because they had a bakery
Looks
there
can be deceiving.
that supplied them. And so, like, I don't know, I was eating smoked salmon and croissants just because it was there. And like, it was really
Beautiful.
nice French salmon, I assume. And like, yeah, if you step outside and want to go buy that at a restaurant, it'll cost you 30 to 60 euros.
Oh, yeah.
So to get it for free was an absolute privilege. Yeah, and then the muffins and the cookies. I don't know, like the muffins were okay for me. Maybe I didn't get one fresh, but like it was a little cakey, and it was like, oh yeah, chocolate. It was like, oh yeah, chocolate soda. Oh, great. But the cookies were like really big. They had like really big dollops of chocolate chips on top, either white chocolate or normal chocolate.
Oh, nice.
And like they were always like a little gooey. So it was always like just an experience. And also all the coffee and like lattes you could ever want just for free. Just, hey, I want this. Cool.
Did you just
There
chill
go.
in the cafeteria the whole time? You're
No,
like-
well, there's like a few areas that are like made into coffee shops. And
Okay.
then there's also like along the river, there was like the main coffee shop and like chill area.
And is that where like people from different countries are like, those are, I imagine, not in the apartment blocks specifically, shared spaces? Or...
No, so it's right next to the it's a shared space for people to go meet up. So like there was a bunch of flat screen TVs to show all the events going on. And then there was like arcades and like...
And people from different
Yes, so
places.
everybody went there to go and watch and like enjoy other sports.
That's
if
cool.
they weren't competing.
So was it also, did it feel like a networking space as well? Because I will read you this quote and then you can carry on answering this question. You said, I think I'm quite friendly, but there are a lot of people who are very much in their zone and don't seem to be very friendly or don't want to give you the time of day. Is that your experience overall?
I don't think that was my overall experience. I think it does happen sometimes, but it is, in general, I found difficult to connect with people on more than just hey, how are you? What sport do you do? Oh, that's cool. What are you doing with your life? Oh, great. Okay, bye. And then that's the end of the conversation. Yeah, I really wish like there were more things to do together to really get to know people.
Yeah, like bonding over more shared activities.
Yes, but then again, it's like everybody is in their zone. It's like, okay, cool, I'll go do this. And then either you get kicked out of the village or you're finished with your event, so you leave anyway.
Yeah, it's an interesting time to catch people.
Yeah, and like, it's just weird because it's like, oh, you'll see these people for a couple weeks if you're lucky. And then, okay, bye, you never see them again until like 4 years later, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's a really weird experience. And again, like, as I said, like time just melts away there. So meeting up with people, it's like, oh, you've been gone for an hour or 2 or 3 and you should probably get back so you can go and sleep and not be completely a zombie the next day.
Plus there's so many cultural differences that are really hard to take into consideration of like, you don't know what the coaching staff are telling people, like, don't interact with anyone. Stay focused. We need you to be in the zone. We need you to be like your most upset self. You need to harness all of that energy and take it into the competition. Like cultural differences like that definitely also make it hard for you to like, no, is this person being rude or are they just like in the zone?
Well, I think it's interesting because everybody knows you're an Olympic athlete. And by the very fact that that is true, everybody can bond on some level. And like, yes, you have cultural differences, but you're there to embrace them, not to fight against them. And yeah, I suppose you do get everyone is like, okay, stay in your zone, don't talk to anyone. But when you do get time, you can just be like, hi, what's up? What are you doing? Oh, that's cool. And like get to know people. Even though like, I don't know, the relationships you get with anyone are short-lived. but it's cool at least to be like, oh, cool, I met a bunch of Olympians and I am one now too.
Who are some of like your coolest interactions with?
That's a good question. I don't know. Like a lot of them were in passing. Like I met Tatiana Smith and Chad Leclerc, and they were pretty cool. And in the closing ceremony, like we were sitting around and there was a bunch of confetti on the floor, and I was like throwing balls of confetti with Chad. And
That's such a cool memory.
Yeah, I don't think this is a common experience for anyone.
Yeah, it's cool to have those moments where you're like, when you just take a step back and you're like, that happened.
Yeah.
I was the person in that memory.
Yeah, it just doesn't sound real. It's just like, huh? Like,
you and Chad Leclerc with like confetti.
Annoying people by throwing confetti at them. Yeah.
That is really funny.
Yeah.
That's really funny. Did you have to share a room with anyone or was it just you?
Yes. So I shared a room with the archer, Vian Rue.
Okay.
And like he was also super chilled and really cool. And we just, we were like, okay, you do your thing, I do my thing. Like archery works differently, so you have a few like practice days and then you compete and then you're done. So he was there a little longer than me.
Mm-hmm.
But like when I was done, like I was just doing my best not to interfere with him and like make sure that he can ready for his event.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was really cool. I mean, we were super chill together and we didn't annoy each other or step on each other's feet. And I think that should be the experience for most of the time, or most of the case.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And when you came back for the closing ceremony, were you paired with someone else?
No, I was in my own area. And
nice.
They had moved around beds and shelves and things.
What was cooler, the opening or closing ceremony?
I think like they were both a little tiring as athletes because you have to walk and like sit. It's just like hurry up and wait kind of thing.
Sure. It's televised, so you're doing a lot more than what also meets the eye, but also the program's very long.
Yes. Well, usually I think that was the biggest part is like the program was just super long. Mm-hmm. And also since we're Afrique du Sud in French, we're first. So like for the opening,
you can't just leave.
Yeah, it was like we meet at 4:30, we leave at 5, we get to the boats at 6, 7:30 the boats leave and like start doing their thing. And then like an hour later, we are down the Seine and we arrive at the...
How iconic.
Yeah, I mean, like that was a super interesting experience. I mean, like it was a little tiring because you were like waving for hours on end to the people on the banks.
The kissing babies equivalent. It's like now you know how tough it is to be a royal.
Just sit there and wave
all
for
this
hours
waving.
on end. Yeah. Then we got rained out a little. And like I was embracing it at first because we did get like plastic ponchos, and I was like, we'll be out of here soon. And then I was like,
of course.
Oh wait, I'm soaked. Oh dear.
Was the whole thing on the Seine for the teams, or is there a point in which you get off the boat and go into?
Yes. So we got off at the end of the route was by the Eiffel Tower, and then we go to I think it was Trocadero, that had the area for the light show and stuff.
Okay.
But I didn't stay for the light show because we were like by the time we got to that area, it was like Poland was still on the screen, so they needed to go through everybody.
Oh my goodness!
They needed to get everybody there.
There's so many letters left.
Yeah, and like it's already raining. You're already getting cold. You don't want to get sick because you're competing in a day or two.
This is horrible for people whose countries like Zimbabwe, Zambia, Yemen, all of those countries who come dead last in the alphabet, and they have to be there until the end of the program. But also, like the opening ceremony, I imagine is a little bit stressful for all the athletes because it's like you haven't competed yet, so like this feels like it must be a little bit of a waste of time and energy. And you're like...
Well, it feels like a bit of an indulgence for sure. Because it's like, should I be standing and doing... No, like I should be chilling because I have the biggest event of my life, if you want to phrase it like that. In however many days.
Yeah.
But then again, it's like you're athletes. If you stand for a bit, you're not going to die.
At least you're with, like, you know that everyone else is also there.
Yes.
It'd be an absolute indulgence if you're the only athlete there and then everyone else is resting.
That would be frightening.
So it was quite the experience. I mean, I've seen like, I didn't watch the opening ceremony, but I certainly saw the most viral, relevant clips on that. Yeah. What was your experience of like the show from being present? Like, did you also get to see like the whole show aspect?
Like kind of, we saw glimpses of it and we were kind of like, what's going on? Because they had big screens along the Seine, I think for the viewing like parties or areas that they had.
Yeah.
Also like when we were going in, all the performers were preparing to start their performance.
Okay.
But then they got rained out, so then it was just rough for everyone. And yeah, I don't know. Blank.
Was everyone as confused there as everyone was at home?
I think even more so, just because like you see it on the screen and you're like, what does this have anything to do with us going down the Seine?
Yeah,
Like you get a bit of like, oh, it's a fashion show. There's like French stuff going on, but I think
There's French stuff going on.
Feel
free to move this as you need, by the way.
Thank you. It was like, I don't know, being there in person, it was definitely made for TV because I think I watched it later on and like you could see the cohesion in the story and like, oh, this is where the torch is going. This is where the lady on the horse is coming from.
There's Snoop Dogg.
Yes, and you're like, oh, okay, cool. But like being on the boat, it was kind of just like, okay, that's a cool performance, but what's going on?
Yeah.
And you're kind of like not in the know. I don't know if it's a security thing or if it's just because no one was communicating it, but yeah.
That's cool. And how was the treatment as an Olympian in Paris and at the village, like from non-Olympians? Did you feel like well looked after?
Yeah, absolutely. I think if you do run around in uniform and accreditation, people are absolutely more likely to be a little bit more polite to you because they don't want to cause an international incident. But in general, like everyone was super chilled. I mean, a few people would ask for photos and I'll be happy to stand and take them with it. Stand there and take them. And yeah, otherwise it was just you go about as your day. You're just another person. Like, yeah, you're an Olympian, but it's still difficult to go up flights of stairs, but you just have a different mentality around it, you know?
Yeah, that's so cool. These are questions you can only ask an Olympian. So super. I was just like geeking out when I was watching your stories. Like, oh my God, this is what it looks like. This is what this building looks like. This is what the cafeteria looks like. And then there was that video of you like playing piano like this.
Yes, oh yeah.
And I was like, what the heck is that? What kind of skill is that? And where did you hone it?
I learned like when I like started learning piano, it was like, I don't know, grade 3. So I was like 11 or like 9. And I learned this one song, Chopsticks, and like it was the only song I knew how to play, so I just played it 200-300 times or whatever on like a piano that had like different settings, so different sounds. And then eventually I was just like, this is kind of boring. What if I do it upside down? And then like I practiced it with my teacher. I performed for my school once. I don't remember when. And I was like, I wonder if this is still here. And then I tried it and it was. And I was like,
that is so crazy. Did you perform it upside down at the school thing?
Yeah. Okay, well, I was first like just doing it normally, and then you like do it upside down and you're like, oh.
Very nice party trick. I saw like there was, I think it wasn't even you who posted about it. It was like another Olympian from Brazil or something.
Yeah. The Brazilian team was there, and like one of them was just playing around on the piano, and I was like, can I play something? And then I played a couple things that I knew. And that was one of them.
That's so crazy. I was just like, I need context on this later on. You spoke about the cafeteria, but this is something that I was quite curious about in terms of nutrition. Like you have like the highest performing athletes in the world. Everyone has very specific dietary requirements. Is this something that the Olympics cater to, or is that more the coaching staff knowing each person's needs? Like, how do you deal with that many people and that many specific requirements?
I think it's both, because you can put specific meal requirements to your national federation. So I think a few, more than a few athletes would have done that. But in general, the catering I found was really good. Also, like, there were complaints about like not having enough meat and protein. I think they did adjust it to just like have as much mincemeat and like burger patties available as possible. And the only like difficulty was towards the end of the evening, around 7 to 10, when everybody's coming home from training and stuff. The lines were just super, super long. And like luckily my training area was like in the village, so I didn't have to go far, and so I could have a meal at like 4 p.m. and not have to go later during the rush.
That's crazy.
But yeah, like lots of really healthy stuff. Also lots of not so healthy stuff that you can obviously eat after.
French fries?
Well, actually not fries now that I think about it. But yeah, like croissants and desserts, and like they had a huge selection of cheeses and
of course
meats, and
that's your protein too. Yeah, for anyone who's complaining, that's a lot of protein you're like sleeping on. But exactly. Yeah, I think it's just like you don't imagine, like when you're watching the Olympics on TV, you don't think about the fact that it's ultimately just people. The cafeteria fills up. People are queuing.
Yes.
Like you don't think about queuing, and like athletes also, and the requirement, like the importance of nutrition and actually getting your calories in and recovering in time, because you still want to be in like top-notch form for when you're competing. So like the training and the replenishment of everything that you're losing while training is so important.
For sure. Luckily for the healthy side, there were lots of like salads and stuff and salad bars. And like this pizza that you could also get, which was great. So like
The weightlifters having the time.
yeah. He was like, oh, I need 10,000 calories in 1 hour. Great, I know where to go.
That is so funny. There's this quote from you. I just want to read it out loud and you can tell me what comes up for you.
Okay.
No pressure. You know how it goes as an athlete. We always take so much pressure, as much pressure as we can. And I think I'm so ready for it. And I can't wait to be blinded by the lights of that awesome stage. You have legitimate stage presence and camera confidence.
Thanks.
Tell me more about that.
Well, I think the camera confidence thing takes time because I remember my first interview with Supersport, they were asking questions that I didn't really have answers to. Well, I did, but you need to get your line and your story right. And once I had that, then everything was a bit more chilled. And yeah, being blinded by the lights of the Grand Palais was excellent. I mean, I think you can see also my video, I'm like looking up and be like, wow, this is really cool. Okay, back to fencing.
But also like you have this moment where you look to the camera and like you know exactly where it is and like, okay, he had a mustache, so like we can't really reference this perfectly anymore. But like you look to the camera and you just do that. And I'm like, bro knows how to play to the cameras.
Yeah,
like
I also winked to the camera, I think. And like it's just because they had them right next to the piece. So you have this massive lens just staring at you. And I was like, what's up, everyone? Yeah.
Nah, that's so cool.
And yeah, back on the pressure thing, like, I don't know, people always say like, oh, it's so much pressure this, so much pressure that. And it's just a concept. Like I find it's just people putting their stress and their desires of like wanting you to succeed because of whatever reason onto you, saying like, oh, you have to win, you have to do this, blah, blah, blah. But like you as an athlete, or rather me as an athlete, like it doesn't matter. It's like, yes, I'm there to do my best and give my best performance. If I win, I win. If I don't, I don't. Like I'm here for every point. I'm not here for the result. And like, yeah, I don't know. I think pressure only really grabs hold of you if you're not prepared for it and if you haven't expected it. And so like knowing you're going in, knowing what you signed up for, and like even being ready for things that you didn't necessarily sign up for is all a part of handling that. And like, I like to think I handle it well. Obviously, I aim to improve. But like just in general, the idea of pressure puts more stress on you than anything else. And so like when you can just compartmentalize, oh, there's so many things going around, like, okay, cool, whatever, back to fencing, it's a lot easier to deal with.
Well said. Very well said. And I think that's really good advice to non-athletes as well. No matter what you're doing, that is really important for you to like remember that you can decide how much of the pressure you want to feel. Like other people could be trying to dump all of it on you. There can be environments that, and people who, because they don't know how to handle their own anxieties, they release it onto their environment. They make everyone else feel it. And you have to kind of have enough strength of being centered enough in your own self and knowing what you believe, knowing what you're trying to be focused on, to not let that get through to you. Because I imagine in that the highest pressure moments, right? Like during the bout, you only have one fight. At that point, that is all you're thinking about. You're not thinking about the next one. No, you can't think like that. You're in this one.
Exactly.
And in that moment, if you're thinking about anything other than that bout, you're not going to, you will leave that space.
Yeah.
You mentally, you have to be fully present. And I think that is actually one of the things that makes martial arts so grounding for people and teaches multiple lessons in how to be centered, how to be calm, how to remain focused in a world where like so many things are vying for your attention and so many things are sources of distractions. If you are distracted in a martial art, you will get beat up.
Yeah, I mean, it's like you're going to be.
You could get knocked out.
Yeah.
You could get brain damage. Like, so many things could happen.
Luckily for fencing, it's actually one of the safest sports. I think it's like the second safest next to, could be archery, could be golf maybe, or archery is more unsafe than fencing because the only things that really happen are muscle strains because we're wearing so much kit.
Sure.
If something goes wrong with the blade, you're kind of okay. And even the blades are designed to bend before breaking. And if they do break, they break flat. And yeah, I think that's like...
The principle still goes though, right? Like you can't afford to be anywhere but in that moment. And I even got to experience that just in lessons, right? Like I haven't done a single other martial art, and like in jiu-jitsu, for example, the stakes are very, very, very high, you know, like you could pass out. There's so many things that can happen, whatever not. But like just even in my lessons with Dr. Tischler, I find that when I'm fully just following his instructions and listening to him, for those 20 minutes, I'm nowhere else but there.
Yes, absolutely.
And it's a rare feeling in this world that we live in to feel that kind of actual singular focus and flow. And that is, you can't have that and pressure at the same time coexist. Everything else has to be irrelevant.
Absolutely. And also just the amount of mental health benefits you get from being able to focus on one thing at once and not getting overwhelmed by, yes, everything else you have to do today, is a really important lesson for every martial art. And additional to your fencing or whatever training you do, like I do meditation and yoga and stuff, and like that's also super helpful. And you don't know like how good it is for you until all of a sudden you stop doing it for a couple of weeks and like you're a little on edge and you're like, wow, I haven't felt that before, and I haven't felt it in this way before. And being able to center yourself again, it takes practice, and not just for being in your sport, but for everyday life.
Everything good that like you benefit from on a day-to-day basis requires practice. And I think that's the thing that no one really wants to hear, but that's just true. It's like, yeah, all of your great habits are only great habits because you continue to repeat them. There's no habit without repetition. There's no habit the moment you stop. You can feel rusty. You can feel the downside of it the moment that you stop, or at least the positive effect of it only lasts so long. Where did meditation and yoga start for you?
I don't actually know. I think during COVID, I found the YouTube, and I found a nice lady, Yoga with Adrian, I think. And I actually started doing it with my parents because like we wake up and we have nothing to do because we're in lockdown. So I started doing yoga there. And I think before that, I'd read a couple books that had mentioned vaguely meditation. And I was interested. So I did some research, found an app, and just did it with that. And like just the techniques that it gives you were also really powerful in the sense of you can apply it to a lot of things. And it just helps with focus, feeling better, and being able to like take a step away from your emotions of like, oh, I'm feeling this. Okay, cool. I don't have to act like this. This is what I want to express and how I want to express it. I don't need it to be filtered by emotions that I haven't dealt with yet.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And it's also like, it's not easy when you're starting, but you get gradually better at it, just like everything else, you know, like the amount of time it takes you to get into that zone and actually calm your body and mind down and all of those things. Do you do any other workouts outside of, you know, training, fencing, yoga?
Well, strength training and conditioning is also really important, I think, for every sport. I mean, like fencing is very technical, so you do need a lot of time doing the technical actions. But if you can't execute them at speed and power and like increase that speed and power, you're going to be stagnant. And like, yes, you can be tactically way better than your opponent, but if he's hitting you faster than you can hit him,
that's where the points go.
Dead. Yeah. And so I mean, like I wouldn't have been able to qualify if I hadn't done the strength work I did, and it's just because it translated into my footwork, it translated into my speed and my actions, and also like clarity of thinking. So being not overwhelmed, but like let's say you've done a workout and you're very tired, and then you go either go to work or go to school and you start learning. Like it sucks at first, but your body adapts to it. And once you get to a certain point, like you can hold a lot more thoughts in your head and be able to deal with them and still think clearly while being under significant bodily stress.
Yeah. It's important for it not to be your first time doing that. I think that that's what gives you that multitasking ability or room to actually handle more, because like now that thing that you're doing is more second nature, and there is more muscle memory helping you through it, and your sole attention and focus isn't going to how to perform that actual task. So what does strength training, what did it look like for you?
Well, I did it in phases, and I did it with a trainer that I also got during COVID. His name's Olympian, so shout out to him. Really, really glad for his help.
Nice.
And he just took me from being like, okay, I'm good at fencing, to actually being like, okay, cool. Here's where you're too tight and need more range of motion. Here's where you need to strengthen yourself, and like here's where you should be doing like extra cardio work, because like fencing is good cardio and power training as well. but doing additional stuff to that and being able to
It
slot
strengthens
it in.
it. Yeah. The same way like
Yes.
fighters of all
Absolutely.
kinds
Yeah,
require
I mean, like,
cardio to last.
yes. And so like we did it in phases where we would do like additional to stretching and like prehab exercises for strengthening like rotator cuffs and hips and such. We would go like base phase, which is a bunch of hybrid strength exercises, like holding a medicine ball above your head and doing certain lunges, and all sorts of different stuff like that. Also like dumbbell chest press, and so like also basic weightlifting exercises. And then strength phase would be more with barbells and squats and such. Also with its own warm-ups and using the agility ladder for a bit more speed. And then power phase would be higher weight, lower reps, and like just trying to activate your nervous system as much as possible.
Nice. So a whole range of things that
Yes.
work together to give you that kind of dynamic range when
Yeah.
you are actually fencing.
Absolutely. And like peaking after, so obviously the plan is to go to power phase and peak. It's like night and day. I can feel just everything's more reactive and faster. And like, I remember the one competition I managed to peak for, I was just doing straight, the most simple action, and no one could parry it. And like,
That's so crazy.
I had the right timing, but I also just had the speed and reactivity to be able to put my sword in before they could even know that it had hit them.
Oh, that's crazy.
Yeah. So it was
So you could
really
actually
nice.
feel it. Like
Yes,
the next time you
100%.
fence, you're like, oh my
Yes.
God.
Yeah. And also like just in terms of strength, I would used to be like the blade would used to be knocked out of my hand and I wouldn't be able to hold it for very long. Or like my opponents would just be stronger than me. So I couldn't actually fight them one-on-one if we got into a more complex blade engagement. But then it's all of a sudden like I'm controlling the people's blades and I can knock them out of the way and hit them and I'm having a good time.
It almost like kind of removes whatever they do because you're dominating the actual dynamic of that that bout. It's almost irrelevant whatever they were gonna respond with when you're already like doing it again.
Yes, it's like you've already hit them. Okay, great. Everything else after that is irrelevant.
We have the segment on the podcast called Rep Caviar, where we ask our guests for their favorite workout jams.
Okay.
What music do you listen to when you work out, if anything?
I listen to some metal. Like depending, like if I'm getting ready for a pretty hectic competition, there's this one band called Amon Amarth.
Okay.
That's like Viking metal. So like, I don't know, it's very like shouty and scratchy at first, but you can like, if you listen or at least read the lyrics, you can appreciate the musicality of it because it's essentially like these beautiful ballads of Viking battles and whatnot that I really like and obviously gets you into the mood to fight.
Of course. That's your origin. That's your medieval story.
Yeah, absolutely. And like singing along with it also like pretty cool, like in the car, I think, on the way to the gym and getting high.
It's your own like haka, like.
Yes, yeah. And like if you associate it with getting your blood pumping, like it already sits in the back of your mind. So when you hear it again, you're ready to
Okay.
fight. Yeah.
Okay. Sick. I mean, I that's what I've heard from a lot of people I know who really enjoy metal and it's just like the musicality of it might not appear to the listener, like who is unfamiliar with it, but it is such a complex genre. So much goes into it, and the lyricism is often telling a very deep story, like you just said.
And it's very vivid as well. Like the storytelling is absolutely excellent, and like with the music and the timing and everything attached is just a great experience.
Crazy. So you have one song there. What other two would you add to this playlist?
Well, that's a whole few albums.
Cool.
So a band.
I'll get you. I'll get songs from you. You don't have to think on the spot now. If something comes to mind, you can say it. But I'll get a list of 3 from you that will be added to like the playlist.
I'm not sure what other songs I would listen to that like really are there to hype me up. Thinking about it now, I have like a sad song. I think it's actually called I don't know what it's called. But like if I'm feeling down, I just put on my headphones, lie on the floor, and I just like either you just sit in the fields for a little, and then after that I feel good. I feel like I process all my emotions, and then I get back to whatever I'm doing.
I love that, and is it always the same sad song that you do that too?
Yeah. And I also make sure like not to listen to it anytime else because it's like this is for.
Oh, that's amazing. So it's like like the same way you're saying you listen to this album when you're on your way to a major competition and like you know that you're associated with the feeling of getting amped up and hyped up. So like you allow the music's feeling. You don't use it on a drive. You reserve it for that drive.
Yes,
and
absolutely.
like you reserve the sad song for when you're actually trying to feel your feels.
Yeah. Well, interestingly, before my qualifying event, I think the week before, like I was doing the like thinking and visualization, etc. And one of the things was like, okay, let's go through the emotions of if I lose. So like that's always a possibility, and I find it helps me fence better when I know that losing is an option, because then it frees you up to do and the best that you can
to not
win.
prevent mistakes also.
Exactly. And like you fight to win, you don't fight not to lose.
Yeah.
And like I did that the week before and like felt good, and I was like, cool, whatever, let's get to it. And I trained for that week, or I think it was more of a rest week, but like did some trainings and like went in positively and was like super focused for most of the day. I mean, like I went through a huge spiral of emotions, but I'm glad that my meditation actually helped quite a lot, because there was a huge gap between I fenced from like 9 to 12, and then there was a 4-hour gap between 12 and 4 when I did the finals. And in between that, like obviously you have one more bout, your brain's going through your whatever, and like you're kind of panicking a little. And I sat in the sun or like under some trees, and I just brought myself back together, and then like all these emotions just suddenly like lifted away, as if like you're above a cloud or above the cloud layer, like all the storms of emotions, and you're just suddenly above, and you're like, wow, okay, I can feel my body, I can feel good again, and like I can just focus on my fencing. And I found that was a really interesting experience.
Yeah, I think there's so much value to what you just said now. Again, outside of a sporting context as well, I think we tend to imagine that preparing for the worst is like anti-manifestation to do,
Yes.
but it is exactly the opposite of that, because you have to see it and acknowledge the possibility so that the outcome doesn't shock you.
Yeah.
Right? Like it needs to not be shocking to you, even if you don't believe you're going to lose. Like you're preparing to win. But one thing that I don't remember where I was reading it, but it was saying like you trying to avoid mistakes is what happens when you don't acknowledge the possibility of losing. And when you try avoid mistakes, you make mistakes and they hit you harder.
Yeah.
Every mistake you make distracts you further from the goal.
Yeah.
And in that moment, you don't have time. You know, like that's why it's important for you to think those thoughts not during the bout, right? Get that sunlight, do that thing, work through the worst case scenario and how you will be okay. And that empowers you to actually have fun, because it's also important for you to have fun and remember like why you're actually here, and because you enjoy this, not because this is some like obligation.
Absolutely.
And like you said, not feeling that external pressure. And there's this quote that speaks to that exact same story that you were just telling. Looking for it now. Ugh, where is this? Sorry. So many notes.
That's good.
My opponent was 14-13 up, and it's 15 to win. Luckily, I made the score, and then I landed the winning point. In the final, at the beginning, I had lost the lead, but then regained it quickly and managed to maintain it for most of the fight, and was absolutely ecstatic to secure that victory. I had never experienced so many emotions in one day before. So I essentially learned to manage myself very well, to stay on track and refocus so that I could win the final.
Yes, that's exactly what I was referencing. And I mean, that the previous bout that I almost lost, I was leading super well at the beginning, and I was like, okay, cool, let's finish this. And then I started rushing and making mistakes and not getting the right timing. And then all of a sudden the score was tied, and then all of a sudden I was losing. And then the adrenaline really kicked in, and I managed to even it out with I think it was a nice parry riposte. And then,
nice.
Yeah, I think, no, it was like maybe a 2-stage. Like I swung because he did something, and then I like grabbed the blade and then hit him. And then the last one, I was like, okay, like I looked at my coach because the time had just finished for one of the rounds.
Yeah.
And I was like, what should I do? And he was just like, make a decision. And I was like, hectic. And then that's where that one photo of me just crouching, staring at the ground comes from.
Oh my God. I remember that. They used that for the Daily Maverick article as well.
And like, that was me absolutely stressing my balls off.
Wait, so there was 1 point left at that point?
Yeah, it was 14-14. And then, so like, then we had a bit of an exchange where we were a bit too careful because one of us could have accidentally lost or accidentally won. And then time ran out, next round. And then I was like, okay, cool. I'm just not attacking because I've lost everything in attack. It's time to just defend. And I move. He does something and I just managed to go da-da, and I won. And I was like,
what? That is so crazy.
Yeah.
So 14-14 with one more like round of 3 minutes left. Is that what it was looking like? And you only have 1 point. Next point wins.
Yes, exactly.
You're on a tiebreaker.
We had kind of gone like too quickly in the first few rounds.
Yeah, it seems like it. Like so many points scored in the first two. And oh, that's crazy. I'm glad you told that story because it really paints a picture of like, firstly, I really like that, coach was like, you have to make a call now. This is on you. Because also following anyone else's call, you would feel like whatever happened, you couldn't own either the victory or the loss. It would just be in the back of your mind. So that's a really quick decision making right now. Make a decision. And you reflected on the fact that your attacks had actually been what caught you out, right?
Yes. So, well, it worked at the beginning, and then
you were
I
tagged.
missed. Oh, I missed. Oh, I got outplayed. Oh, I missed. And it's like,
so you just
probably stop doing that.
Countered his like from a defensive position.
Yeah,
you managed to catch him out on the attack.
Yes, because he was also getting a few points, like doing a running attack at me.
Sure.
Or just like waiting for me to try and grab the blade and then hitting. And so we'd get a lot of lights together like that. So the score wasn't changing; it was just going up closer to the end. And then, and then I was just so glad to let my final point. And I don't know. I think my final was less stressful than that because it was like, okay, I'm losing at first. It was like 4-2. Then I evened out the score and made it like 6-4. And then we had a couple exchanges. Eventually, it was like 8-8, and then it was 10-8, and then I was like ahead towards the final. And like a few things happened that I wasn't happy about, but I was like, cool, whatever. Back to focus, and then just made sure that like I just need a hit, so I win, and then that's
Damn.
Yeah,
I feel like I have more perspective on what all of these like little nuances mean and how difficult it is to actually get your head straight and like not lose sight. 14-14 is a very stressful scoreline
like,
to be working with.
Oops, I lose. There goes your chance to go to the Olympics. Yeah.
Especially when you have that dream in mind. Our second last segment is called Explain. I'm going to shoot a round of quick fire questions your way. Don't think, just answer.
Okay.
What's the fastest way to change the world?
I have no clue. I mean, just be you. Be the positive change you want to see in the world.
Beautiful.
And execute that as best as you can.
I'm going to cut it as I have no clue.
I have no clue. Good luck. Have fun. I don't know.
Good luck. No, it's great advice. Be you. Like, that's the only thing like no one else is. And be the positive change you want to see in the world. I think it's very easy for us to want to change the world before we have a go at ourselves and actually like try to change ourselves for the better. But changing yourself and improving on yourself, and it transforms your environment. And that is the change in the world that you want to see.
Well, I mean, yes, it's all the cliches, but it does start with you. And if you can change yourself to be the best version of yourself that you want to be, that automatically impacts your community, the people around you, and everything they do. And like, if that's no positive change, then what is?
And cliches are just true. That's why they're cliches.
Yeah.
The expression, touche, yay or nay.
Depends.
Do you use it?
I mean, like sometimes, not ironically. Otherwise, like you just kind of do it and you're okay.
What is the craziest thing you saw during your stay at the Olympic Village?
Craziest thing I saw? I don't know. It was really hot, so I wanted to jump in the Seine a few times, but I didn't do that.
I'm so glad you didn't do that because the people competing in the swimming one, like some people got sick from like the dirtiness.
I thought about the poor like security guards, well not security guards, the police force that would have to drag me out of the river. And I was like, okay, let me just go get a cold drink.
That'd be a great story though. Who from Team SA were you fangirling over?
I don't know, like I'm a really bad fangirl because I like get starstruck. I'm like, oh, that's that guy, cool. And you just don't, you don't look at them, you don't interact, you just say, hi, hey, what's up? And then that's it. And like, it's weird because like you have all these questions you think you want to ask these people and then they just disappear.
Yeah, but you freeze. Yeah. You're like, I know who you are. And like something random comes out. What about any international athletes? Anyone you were like excited to see?
It was really interesting just to see the level of athleticism. Like, of course, in general, like, yes, it's the Olympics. You're going to see the world's best athletes. But like seeing it in person versus on camera is a completely different experience. So like, I don't know, I saw more than a few like familiar like track athletes and athletes from other sports like gymnastics and such. And like, it was just like, wow, like the camera does not do justice to the work that these people have done.
Yeah, that must be amazing. What's your biggest vice?
My biggest vice? That's a good question. I mean, like I was pretty good at not doing anything too bad other than maybe a glass of wine every now and then.
Okay.
But especially before
Very
the
healthy
Olympics.
vice.
Yeah, well, like, but especially like before the Olympics, I was like, I don't need alcohol. I don't need to do anything other than just eat healthy and do my thing. Yeah, I don't know what my vice is. I think probably YouTube and like Instagram Reels. It's just like it reels you in, and
I'm glad that
you're just hooked.
I'm glad you answered like that, because that's the case for so many of us. Like it's a real thing.
Absolutely.
Like it's not like immune from being like one of mine is caffeine.
Yes.
It's like all of these count. How did you celebrate qualifying for the Olympics?
I don't actually remember. That's crazy. I just remember screaming my lungs out so much that my voice was like broken and like I could hardly speak. My parents came to watch me qualify, so it was amazing time. They also came to watch me fence at the Olympics, which was an awesome
It's so
experience.
nice. It's nice to have like those family experiences and kind of turn it into like an impromptu family trip as well.
Yeah, yeah, it was really cool. A little expensive, but like worth it.
For sure, it's nice that like they show up for you like that.
Yes, absolutely. Like thank you so much.
Out of all the countries you've traveled to for fencing, who have been the most hospitable?
Hospitable countries. It kind of depends on like if you got a good hotel and a good transport. Like sometimes, stuff happens and you don't get your transport on time, or they don't know you're arriving and someone did something wrong. But
reception, like culturally, like people who are excited for you to be there kind of vibe?
I don't know. It's weird because whenever you go to fence, it feels very isolated. It's kind of like you do your own thing. You go there to fence, you stay in a fencing hall for however long. And if you can, like as much as I try to, you go to museums and like actually experience the culture of the place you are at. But yeah, like I think every place has its absolutely awesome hospitability areas, and then sometimes it's like you don't get what you want, but it's okay. Like
sure, at least like you're with your group and with your people, and
yes, yeah,
like you're not experiencing
like,
everything fully alone.
Even if you are fully alone, it's kind of like, okay, cool, I know what I need to do next, and then I can just go home and sleep because I'm fed or whatever, like.
Yeah, I get you. To close off, we have this segment where you leave us with one book that has left an impression on you in your life. It doesn't have to be recent. It doesn't have to be self-help. Just something that comes to mind in your journey.
I've been reading The Book of Five Rings by Miyamoto Musashi recently.
Okay.
Which is like more of a kendo book, so Japanese sword fighting, and also like. So I was trying to apply some like things from what he
like
had
the philosophy
to my own
of
things. And he has a lot of things about like, I don't know, just the mentality of sword fighting. And the one quote that really stuck with me was like, let me try and remember it properly. Or should I just read it? It was to win a battle. It was along the lines of, to win a battle, you have to act as if you are already dead.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, that's a really powerful note to end off on. Harry Sainer, thank you so much. You're a wonderful sport. Grateful that you're doing this for South Africa. And hopefully we see you at the next Olympics.
Absolutely.
And onwards and upwards. Thank you so much for being part of this.
Thank you, Abba. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks. That's right.
Thanks, guys.